If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
And we are back. I'm Chris Evans, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by my good friend Khalid Mohammed from Command 11 in Pakistan, aka Singalot 711. And directly below us, my good friend Jeff MD, 26-year CIA operative, author extraordinaire, also known as 007. And I got Doc Pete on my phone and Bluetoothed in for tonight's conversation. He had a pretty crazy day. So I'll be bringing him in as soon as we get past the conflicted question and whatnot. So I'm going to switch to a separate stage just to go through a couple things quickly. And when I bring everybody back tonight, we're going to be discussing counterinsurgency lessons learned from Iraq and Afghanistan and citizens, adapting those coin strategies, which stands for counterinsurgency, again, post 9/11 2.0. But before we get into that, we're going to deal with some house cleaning stuff here. First and foremost, have you guys seen what happened to gold today? Look at the end of this chart. It's at $4,379 now, and this graph is over the past 12 months. And you all know that I do not have an affinity for working with gold companies, but two of our guardians put some money in a gold-backed IRA with a company called Noble Gold, so noblegoldinvestments.com. And this homepage used to have Charlie Kirk on it before he was assassinated. That was one of the reasons I was willing to work with them. But the other reason was when our followers come to me and say, hey, man, this has been a really good move. So what you do is if you reach out to noblegoldinvestments.com, they will take a portion of your 401k, your IRA, put it into a gold-backed IRA so that you're not subject to the stock market going up and down like a toilet seat. And as you can see from the price right now, gold is on a tear and it's going to continue on a tear. So I know some people in the financial world, very high up, like global insurance companies, that sort of stuff, they're predicting that gold's going to go $12,000 an ounce. They're also predicting that if Trump decides to back our dollar with gold, oil, and Bitcoin, that gold will go over $20,000 an ounce in the blink of an eye. And the same guys are saying that if he tries to back the 37 trillion in debt that we have with gold, it's going over $100,000 an ounce. So typically, and Jeff MD's pointed this out before, you don't usually buy when something's on the rise, but I'll tell you what, where gold's going right now, where it's going to continue to gold, it's not going backwards. It's not going the other direction. So I think this is a really good time for people who want to basically supercharge your retirement funds. Go to noblegoldinvestments.com and reach out to them, talk to them about potentially moving some of your retirement funds from a 401k or IRA into a gold-backed IRA. Same deal as usual. You don't have to pay taxes on it till you withdraw the money, but it's looking like a pretty sound investment at this particular point in time. So with that being said, let me get everybody back on stage here for the conflicted question of the night. I managed not to cut the side off of this one. Check that out, Khalid.
Well done.
Improvement from last night. All right. So anyway, Pablo, the power thirsty son of a Mexican drug lord, saw an opportunity in the collapse of society. He wanted to rise up and control areas that were governed by chaos. If power was your goal and you had a few dozen men and arms at your disposal, how would you go about increasing your influence? And we all know without saying that Khalid would just use battlefield executions to eliminate all of his
You don't
competition.
follow your dad.
That would be it, right, Cleet? So we don't even really need to get your answer at the end of this, do we? Yeah, that's what I figured. All right. So just a quick mention here, by the way. So we launched SDN ThreatWire today. Critical intel, no delays. So Khalid is contributing to this. John Wheaton's contributing to this. These are 60 to 90 second shorts that are going out to 5 different platforms. Some days you may see upwards of half a dozen of these going out. And Khalid did a really good one today. You can check it out by going to YouTube and then just at SDN ThreatWire is the username, the account name, or you can just search on SDN ThreatWire. But it's also going to TikTok. It's going to our X's. It's going to, by the way, I don't use TikTok. John Wheaton is looking after that for me. I wouldn't put it on my phone. I'm trying to think where else is it going, Khalid? It's going
Instagram.
to Instagram, Substack, and maybe I'm missing one more, but it's pretty cool. John's also put some work into it to make sure that you get like a TLDR description at the top of the video. Too long didn't read, and then a short explanation of it. But essentially all this is quick intel hits, 60 to 90 second long videos. And I'm telling you, the level of interest is already pretty awesome. Can you all hear that blinker going in the background? Because I've got Doc on mute and I'm hearing it in my headphones. Are you guys hearing it?
I hear it.
We're hearing it too. Yep.
All right. But I just put it on mute a second time. Maybe that helps. I don't know. We'll find out soon enough. Either way, check it out. SDN ThreatWire. Pretty cool stuff. So I'm going to bring up the first one here. And actually, we don't need mute anyway. Hey, Doc, you're on air.
Hey, brother. How are you doing, sir? Living
the dream yourself.
Well, I'm just driving across Texas, westbound and down.
Isn't there a song it's eastbound and down though? Is that like a new song you've come up with? I'll expect to see the video tomorrow.
Yeah, that's the second stanza, westbound and down. They're heading back to Atlanta, heading west and then heading east. Yeah.
Right on. Well, we've got a few news items we're going to cover quickly, Doc. And what I'm going to do, just for the audience, by the way, Doc is so busy these days that the best we could do was a phone call tonight. So, Doc, I'm going to go through each section of the podcast, come to you first, so you know that automatically your first line. Then I'll go to Khalid and Jeff, and we'll facilitate it that way. So I've got an X post up on screen right now that Khalid posted earlier today. Swarms of sophisticated chatbots enabled by China are embedded in platforms like Reddit and Discord to radicalize America's youth, foment political division, and encourage violence, according to intelligence experts. Doc, how extensive is this stuff? I mean, you're ahead of the curve on a lot of intel. Say again?
Right. Go ahead. Say again, over.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just how pervasive is this stuff? I know you're ahead of the curve on a lot of intelligence stuff, but all this subterfuge that's being engaged on China's part.
Yeah, the Chinese attacks, the 40-year plan, the 100-year plan, it is insidious nonsense, obviously. Most people don't see it. Using the Discord chat, this isn't the first time that's been used. Specifically, remember Uvalde, and then before that, the Buffalo shooters.
Yes, sir.
The Uvalde, Texas school shooting. So they were the kids, both those kids that were quartered, and I say kids, young men that went in and slaughtered people, were both in the same kind of Discord chat. Matter of fact, the same chat was used for both of those specifically. So Chinese have, using that same MO to get into these minds of kids. And everything they do is insidious. One of the big things we were down here running for office is the Chinese components that are in a lot of this wind technology, solar technology, batteries going in the ground, AI data centers. And so for us, when we talk about grid down scenarios and we talk about things like this, they're doing it from multiple vectors. It's not just that. I mean, obviously there's so much more to the attack, and Chinese are using thugs, if you will, in the Tren de Aragua gangs that came across on the southern border here. This is multi-pronged, and it is something that we are heavily involved in. Whether I'm running for governor or not, I was working on the counter human trafficking. You run into this stuff all the time. So this is this is not just me trying to scare people. This is just fact.
Yeah, appreciate that insight, Doc. So, Khalid, this is your post.
Yeah.
Let me hear your extended thoughts.
Well, look, the article says that they've developed a chatbot that can do 27 different personalities. So they can carry you from, if you want somebody soft and gentle to talk to you, to draw you in, or if you want the drill sergeant type of person to draw you in, and everything in between. So the Chinese, like Doc is saying, I mean, the Chinese have put a lot of effort into this. I'll tell you another thing. Just about half an hour before we went on air, the Latvia, Estonia, and Austria caught another Chinese network like it was in New York. Another SIM farm that was in New York that had over 1,200 phones. And they say that the damage is somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 million euros to each country.
Wow. That's significant. It's a big deal. Jeff, do you want to comment on this Chinese operation?
Well, yeah, it's a relatively low cost, high impact way to, manipulate U.S. society as a whole, because you start messing with kids' minds, and let's face it, Rush Limbaugh calls them, skulls full of mush, and that's basically true. And they have yet to learn the old adage, if it's too good to be true, it probably isn't.
Right.
And so they just buy into this crap, and they think these are real people, and they think they're friends. And I hate to say it, we've got a generation that cannot interact with actual human beings. Everything has to be electronic. They don't know how to talk. They don't know how to write letters. They don't know how to hold a conversation.
Yep. Yeah, true story. 100%. So moving on to the next one here, and we've only got a couple of them. This is from Khalid as well. So high resolution satellite images confirm that the Azmat-Ullah Qarar camp in Kandahar, Afghanistan hit a UCAV strike by the Pakistan Air Force, sustained extensive damage. The base, originally built by U.S. and NATO forces as their largest installation in the region, was later taken over by Taliban border battalions and special forces after the Western withdrawal. Can any of our GWAT friends tell us what was the name of the base during the U.S. NATO time? So, Doc, does that base ring a bell for you at all?
We're talking about drone swarm. Was that on Indian May, or where? This one I'm unaware of.
Azmat-Ullah Qarar camp in Kandahar.
Tell Doc that it's Kandahar Airfield.
Bastion. Yeah, Bastion. Okay, yeah, it's Kandahar Airfield. Yeah, no, I didn't operate in that area, but I know exactly what you're talking about. This was heavily occupied by Brits and U.S. Marines for my tours over there. But yeah, that's still pretty far into the interior.
Yeah.
So Khalid, expand on this a little bit. What did you guys do now?
We sent in two unmanned combat aerial drones, and they used bunker buster bombs, and they hit this airport. Well, they hit this base. It is completely wiped out. The leader of the Taliban, Habibullah Akhundzada, his bodyguards were living there. They're dead. We took them out in that strike. It was a 2,000-pound bomb, two of them that we fired on that base, and we've leveled it. It's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. We've done the same to other bases in Afghanistan, but this was a key shot because it's Kandahar, and that is deep into Afghanistan. I mean, that's almost hitting Iran.
So technically, since the Afghanis didn't pay us for that base, are you guys going to pay us for it now that you wrecked it?
Well, if we take over Afghanistan, we'll help you rebuild it.
Fair enough. Jeff, were you anywhere near this region when you were in Afghanistan?
I was in the north, but if that's Kandahar Airfield, I landed there and actually took a piss there once, if that counts.
There's plenty of places to take a piss now there.
Well, no, we were flying in, and we did a circuit, and you go where the airplane goes. So it's like coming out. I went to Tajikistan. Yeah, we landed in Dushanbe and then ended up in Uzbekistan. So yeah, but I did go to Kandahar. I landed there, got out, took a piss, got back on the plane, and flew to Kabul.
Too much. So is this pretty recent imagery, Khalid? Here,
4 days ago. 4 days ago.
Okay.
Yeah, on the first day we did our bombing, we hit that airport.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like
Wow.
things are in a state of disarray for sure. So next one up, unfortunately, Doc, you won't be able to see it, but it's a 1 minute, 22-second video on 1,000 plus criminals arrested in Chicago by DHS. And the girl who posted it, she says, "Our DHS, 2 exclamation points. I voted for this, 2 exclamation points." I'm going to play the whole video. I'll try to give you the gist of it so you can comment on it, Doc, and then we'll go to the other guys. But here we go.
Let me call somebody, taxi. What's going on? What's going on? Hey, interrupt us here, please. I will arrest you.
So that was an awesome video, Doc. I'm going to send you the link so you can watch it when you get off of
Yeah,
here.
I got to see this. It sounded wonderful.
Oh, it was freaking awesome. So it was 1,000, not just criminals, illegal alien criminals that they snagged. It's funny as hell because sometimes, Doc, when they showed up, the criminals would look at them, try to run away, trip over their shoelaces, fall flat on their face, and that was the end of their getaway. It was pretty good. Khalid, that's the biggest number I've seen in one raid like that. Like, I don't know, it doesn't say how long it went on, but that's a lot of guys.
Chicago's the dirtiest of all. I mean, everyone's talking about Portland being full of illegals, but Chicago, Minneapolis, Columbus, Indianapolis, these are main hubs for your illegals. I saw someone put up a map the other day of the U.S. and had put the entire Midwest in red and said "Free the Middle East." I just started laughing. I was like, "Oh my God, he's absolutely right."
That was freaking
Oh my God. You know, Chris, I got to add something to that too. This is Doc again.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, you know that yesterday there was a police officer, a Chicago police officer that was not a U.S. citizen, but when he's on duty, carries a weapon. And he got rolled up, I believe, a day ago or so by ICE.
I saw that. Sworn in as a cop, carrying a gun, not even here legally. Unbelievable.
Well, and he was involved in the Antifa stuff. He was, disguising himself. But bad situation.
Wow. Well, thank God they caught him. Jeff, that was a pretty good video. I think we're kicking things off on the right note tonight.
Yeah, I love the fact how they run and then they turn around and say, "Oh crap, they're chasing me," I guess, and then they just stop. The guy who got busted, who was the cop, was from Montenegro, and he'd been here illegally for 10 freaking years.
Wow.
And he's facing felony charges because he's one, illegal alien, and 2, alien in possession of a firearm, which is a felony in the United States. So yeah, he's in deep shit. As well he should be. And they need to do is go after the people who hired him. And if there's any indication whatsoever that they knew he was not a U.S. citizen, man, they should be in jail. And if they didn't check, they should be fired.
Good point. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great point, Jeff. So first audience poll of the night. I mean, I love the caption on this video where the girl says, "This is what I voted for." So if you voted for this, it's starting again. If you voted for this, put a 1 in the live chat, whatever platform that you're on. If you didn't vote for this, put a 0 in the live chat. I'm pretty sure that our audience across the board is going to go with 1s, but I want to see it for myself. So that's it for the sit rep tonight, because we wanted to get going as quickly as we could and not waste Doc Pete's time. So how many days in a row have you been working now, Doc?
You mean campaigning?
Yeah, 70 days or something.
Well, no, it's right after we had the Guadalupe River flood. We were going to kick off on July the 4th, but that offset us by about a month. So we really started in August. So since August, we've been pretty much every day moving somewhere.
Yeah, it's crazy. Hats off to you. All right, so we're going to jump into the main topic tonight, which is post 9/11 2.0 and complex coordinated terrorist attacks on the country. And we're specifically going to focus on counterinsurgency lessons learned from Iraq and Afghanistan, and citizens, especially GWAT vets, adapting counterinsurgency strategies, referred to as COIN, for counterinsurgency, to identify, isolate, and weaken insurgent networks. So on the flip side, our enemies, they learned from 9/11 1.0, and now they're bringing some very evolved terrorist tactics to America. And that makes the counterinsurgency lessons from Iraq and Afghanistan essential knowledge, even for everyday people like all of us. And these are battle tested strategies that all three guys on the panel are going to speak to. I can't speak to it, but the pros can. But they can be adapted potentially to protect our neighborhoods, families, churches when, traditional security systems fail. So they're going to speak very specifically on exactly how you can apply these, I was going to say expensive, but hard-won military principles at home, so you can take personal responsibility for defending what matters the most to you. Because let's be realistic, right now, you are your own first responder. Post 9/11 2.0, that rises in significance by a fair bit. So let's introduce this and frame the threat. So over the past 2 decades, we've seen a shift from symbolic single point terrorist strikes to complex coordinated attacks across multiple locations simultaneously or in rapid sequence. And these attacks stretch conventional response systems and demand a new security posture, especially at the local level. So our central question really is what lessons did we learn from Iraq and Afghanistan's counterinsurgency campaigns that can be adapted here at home by everyday citizens and essentially degrade these insurgent networks before they strike? So we're going to explore how communities can act as force multipliers by applying these principles, but remaining inside of legal and civil boundaries, which are obviously at play. I've heard some people say they don't care when the shit hits the fan, they're going to do whatever they want. And, if it requires them to shoot somebody, they would go ahead and do that. Some of that is internet bravado, but some of that is people telling you who they really are. And I don't have much advice for them other than to say there is always a reckoning. There is always a reckoning. So careful what you wish for on that. So ultimately, our goal is to empower everyday Americans, neighborhood watch leaders, first responders, citizens who are motivated, like our guardians, meaning survival dispatch news guardians, to put layers of resilience in place in the homeland. So Doc, I'm going to come straight to you with this one.
Yeah.
How would you characterize the evolution from 9/11 1.0 and the terrorism that was at play then to today's level, especially when it comes to these complex coordinated terrorist attacks? I know they didn't start with Mumbai in 2008, but that's kind of like the thing that really kicked off CCTAs.
Yeah. Well, I think when you look at the oath of office and you talk about all enemies, foreign and domestic, these are the domestic. And some of these, well, once again, much like we were talking about with China, this is an insurgency that is insidious. And so it's like the color revolutions downrange. You don't really see it until it's in your face. And so the infiltrators are here. And so for me, especially prior to even running for governor, I was going around in different communities in Texas, primarily, some out of state, and discussing these things with citizen groups. And these are like neighborhood watch programs, that are actually a lot more alert and a lot oriented, situationally aware as to the problem set, because they've been, some people call it being red pilled, but they're just reading, the tea leaves, and they know what they're listening to, and they know that they're not going to take it from mainstream media. So for a guy like me, You know, the company that we have is, you know, another company that I've advised with and assisted and accompanied with is a domestic internal defense company. So the terminology for this stuff, when you're fighting it for Green Berets downrange, you either do foreign internal defense or you do unconventional warfare. It really depends on who the customer is that you're servicing. Are you promoting, or are you supporting a government that's legitimate, that is got an insurgency? That's doing FID, foreign internal defense. If you're doing unconventional warfare, that's early onset. Afghanistan, we're going up against the Taliban. We link up with the Northern Alliance. A bunch of guys link up on the ground. You got your advanced parties. We go in, create you know, stability and all that. Now, in this case, it's domestic internal defense, a name that I never thought I would be saying.
Wow.
However, coming back from the wars and coming back from all this, you know, mayhem downrange, you're watching it and then you can just see it. You know, I didn't see it because I was gone so long. I didn't pay attention to what was happening back home. So there's a certain set of principles that we use in order to train and equip and to organize, you know, groups to train, equip against these kind of insurgencies that are out there, and they are out there. That's the thing. You know, in Texas, we're looking at Sharia law cities. We're looking at the Colonia, which is about 100,000 people of illegals that live north of Houston in a big community of 40 square miles. And so there's a lot of nefarious activities going on there. And so we have to kind of advise our citizens on how to do this. And that's an art unto itself, but it's really not that hard. It's just showing them their place and what they're capable of doing, and then matching it up with either you're either a part of the guerrilla force, the auxiliary, or the underground, if you're talking unconventional. But that's really, you know, one of three places. Not everybody's meant to, you know, stand a post, and it has to do with, you know, providing security for your neighborhood, your area, your region.
I appreciate that, Doc. So I'm going to go to Khalid for a question. Then I'm going to come back to you, and then I'm going to wrap up this first segment with Jeff, because I have specific questions for each of you. And this is a big one, Khalid. So I don't expect you to nail everything, but just maybe hit the high points. What are the structural or tactical gaps in our domestic preparedness that these newer types of attacks exploit?
Well, first off, you've got to take into account that your police force isn't ready and isn't even looking for these asymmetrical threats. So when you're not looking for it, you've left the door open for them. We use a concept when we're fighting in Pakistan, when we're dealing with the insurgency, we deal with a concept called turning an elephant into a mouse. So you take this big threat and you break it down, you break it down, you break it down, you turn it into a mouse where you can actually defeat it. That means working your own surveillance, working your own intelligence, working your own security, and not going outside of your neighborhood. You are not responsible for protecting the entire city. You're only responsible for protecting your neighborhood. So in your neighborhood, you can fly your own drones. You can be weaponized. You can put up barricades so people can't get in. You can put up security guards where they're your own people from the neighborhood that are standing security, that are capable to operate weapons. When someone tries to make entry, they can stop them, ask them, okay, which house do you live in? I haven't seen you here before. Who are you going to? They can do a check right there to keep people from getting in. The bigger fear is what happens outside of your neighborhood, because that's where the panic is going to be created. That's going to force a rush into suburban areas, into rural areas, because when the metropolitans are hit, everybody's going to flee to someplace. The problem that we have to deal with right now is that we either have to build up, like Doc was saying, you either have to build up an auxiliary force that is able to counter that insurgency, or you have to figure out what they've learned. And it's like in the post I put up earlier, and change your tactics slightly, because they've been watching you for months. A slight change in your tactics, a slight change in your timing will throw everything off for them, because they're working on what they've watched, what they've seen over the past months. A slight change changes everything.
I appreciate that, Khalid. So, Doc, I'm coming back to you before I go to Jeff, because I'm curious, what are the counterinsurgency lessons that we learned in Iraq and Afghanistan that would be the most relevant to citizen level defense in our neighborhoods here?
Yeah, beautiful question. You know, the number one thing to remember is we have the watches, right? We know, you know, what we're going to do at what time. They have the time. So they're just sitting quietly, or they've been sitting quietly. It's like a sniper. So they have the time. They can choose the time. You cannot be on 100% guard at all times. That's why you have to develop these more or less standard operating procedures. What is this neighborhood look, or what is this area going to do when something happens? So this county I'm in right now, Hayes County, Texas, probably the most robust county for citizen group. They have their own repeater towers from the north side of the county to the south. And they don't just operate in a time of a exigent circumstance with regard to anything kinetic. We're talking about a winter storm or a tornado or a flood, when we just had these floods in the Guadalupe. So they're already organized. They're ready to go. They know each other. They talk to each other, and they're connected to other groups around the state via ham radio, or like in my truck, repeater, Motorola, where I can talk to people. And they're all citizen groups, right? But they're tied to groups like ours that are, not necessarily, we're not NGOs, but we're, 501c3s, 508c1as. And we have, state credentials under TCOL, Texas Council of Law Enforcement, bunch of former retired military. Now, me as the governor, I'm going to have a different setup. But for where we're at right now, these groups are really ready to mobilize at any time should there be some sort of emergency, a grid down scenario, another storm. We did it. We went through it with the, Winter Storm Uri, they call it in Texas, where we were down for a week. Keep things from turning into chaos. But you've got to have all this stuff planned out in advance. But the key thing is, if it's something insidious, nefarious, like a kinetic attack or another bomb, or a bombing, so to speak, we're looking at, you've got to defer to the people, at least with some expertise, because Khalid is right. Law enforcement is not ready for that. When I talk to law enforcement, we do try to interface with them. We do. However, most of them are not switched on to that, and they're literally chock full of daily calls that they're going to take in.
I appreciate that, Doc. Just out of curiosity, we've been doing a lot of stuff on communication options. And when you mentioned Motorola and repeaters, are y'all using business class radios that have some encryption and channel hopping?
Absolutely. All of ours are. Every one of them.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. We've got them as well, especially for being in convoys. So Jeff, coming to you next. And there's a reason I went to Doc before coming to you, because the questions were a little bit out of order, but what are the ethical and legal guardrails that citizens need to be aware of and that they need to observe when they're applying any of these tactics here at home?
Well, not a lawyer, but it's the West, but it's not the wild, wild West. You can't just randomly shoot people because they don't want to answer your question. That kind of thing. If you've cordoned off your neighborhood and you say, sorry, we're not letting you in because you haven't demonstrated that you have a reason to be here, and people do this, I have a right to go wherever I want. That's when you say, actually, no, you don't. You need to read your Constitution. You don't have a right to come into our neighborhood if we don't want you here. And you need to stand firm with that and don't let people bluff you. But on the flip side, you can't just put a bullet in a guy because he says something you don't like. That's why it's really important that you know your neighbors, especially on the neighborhood level. You get people together that, like you said, you say, okay, where do you live? This house. Describe the house. Well, if the guy can't, he can pull an address off of the internet. But if he can't describe the house, if he doesn't say, okay, do you mow do you have a yard? Is it desert landscape? What do you got? If they can't describe it, they don't belong there. And if they say, you can't keep me out, that's when you say, well, actually, yes, I can. And I'm willing to die on that hill if there's a reckoning later that says you denied this man access to his property. That's not the same as you shot the guy.
Right. So I'm listening to you when you say, you can't just shoot the guy. So Khalid, I hope you're taking notes before you move back to America.
Or in Pakistan, maybe you can. Over here, not so much.
No, but he's moving back home here, and that's why I'm saying you should be taking notes. No battlefield executions.
No. Lisa said the same thing to me. You can't shoot everybody. I'm like, I know.
That's his wife, Doc.
The thing about a cell is the people in the cell know who's in the cell. You should treat your neighborhood like a cell.
Good point.
You should know who belongs in your neighborhood and who doesn't. And if somebody says, I'm so-and-so's son or I'm so-and-so's nephew, say, you're going to stay here until we confirm it because we're not going to let you go.
So, that's crazy. You haven't heard this, Doc, and I would show this video, but it's on my phone, so I'm not going to show it. But we've had people casing our neighborhood, and 3 times there's been somebody's come to our place, Doc. So I walk out front to go to the mailbox last week or the week before, there's a guy parked blocking the end of my driveway, taking video of my property. So I start shooting a video and I walk out to him. He, as soon as, I get close to him, he mashes the throttle, goes an eighth of a mile down the road, does a U-turn, comes back, stops, rolls his window down, calls me everything but a white man. And how dare I videotape him? And I said, you were taking a video of my property and you don't belong here. This isn't your neighborhood. So he goes another eighth of a mile the other direction, does a U-turn, comes back again, rolls his passenger window down to cuss at me, goes another eighth of a mile, does a U-turn, takes off. So, I mean, it's crazy stuff. I can talk to some other stuff offline that's related to that, but let's get into segment number 2, the anatomy of complex coordinated attacks and counterinsurgency vulnerabilities. So CCTA, complex coordinated terrorist attack, we've been discussing this since we started this long war series. Khalid, 38, 39, 40 episodes ago.
41. We're at 41 now.
We're at 41. Okay, thank you. You're the scorekeeper. So essentially the whole 9/11 2.0 intelligence says 10 to 15 tier 2 cities in America, population 100 to 500,000, that you have multiple cells attacking soft locations or soft targets in each of those cities, culminating with taking the level 1 trauma center and holding up in there until somebody like Delta Team comes and ends the siege. Mumbai 2008 is a great example. And if you haven't seen the movie Hotel Mumbai, Khalid has said more than once, it's a pretty good representation of what actually happened. And that's essentially the blueprint for modern day CCTAs. So essentially it's called complex attacks because you've got all sorts of things that have interdependent timing. So it could be decoys, could be different weapon types. So it's not just guns, it's not just grenades. Like Khalid said, C4 was used in Mumbai. And you've got this combination that we spoke to last night between kinetic and non-kinetic operations, so cyber attacks. And, when we had these insurgency campaigns in Iraq and Afghanistan, they used very decentralized cell models, and their operational secrecy was at a pretty high level. That's kind of part of the counterinsurgency stuff. But one of the vulnerabilities in those campaigns was the insurgents' need for local logistical support, safe houses, recruitment, information networks, those sort of things. So if you and your group would call it your neighborhood MAG, mutual assistance group, neighborhood watch, whatever you want to call it, if you were able to deny or disrupt supporting networks, that whether it be communications, financial flows, safe harbors, a big one, the larger attack becomes a little bit more brittle. So a great example would be, we've had multiple reports in Florida now from multiple different SOs. It started with TDA and Sinaloa cartel, where they said, if you live in an upper middle class neighborhood and homes sell relatively quickly and you start to see empty homes, they're being used as safe houses. They're being used as warehouses to store stuff, whether it be drugs, guns, whatever the case may be. And then the last batch of notifications we got said, yeah, in addition to TDA and Sinaloa cartel, you have to worry about the terrorists using those properties. And I'm not going to get too deep down that rabbit hole, but Doc, I'm going to come to you with the first question here.
Yeah.
What patterns or tactics do modern insurgent groups use in these CCTAs that mirror those foreign insurgencies that you guys fought in the GWAT?
Right. So when you're first thing you look at with that is you look at permissiveness of the area of operations, which means, is it non-permissive for them, semi, or is it permissive? Now downrange, it was permissive for them and non-permissive for us in places on the border in Texas. We're looking at from the Rio Grande up to probably about 90 miles inland. It's semi-permissive sometimes for us. Now that was during the Biden administration. It's gotten better now because Trump put a tourniquet on that bleed. But with regard to the lily pads, I'm going to call them. So these are lily pads. So the houses that are either empty, but more commonly what we're seeing is they rent out an Airbnb for a long period of time. And they use that thing with an innocuous looking family that comes and says, I'm going to rent this. Nobody, lifts a finger to it, pays attention to it, if you will. And then you start noticing that as the neighbors are used to other cars coming and going, nobody really knows who has it rented out. So they continue to use that same lily pad that's deep inside of our territory, if you will. So these techniques, this is, if we're looking at them doing that downrange, this is how it looks like here, right? That even trailer parks where they might have a trailer just full of storage, or even a storage facility where you just have a warehouse or a warehouse, but a rented out space with equipment in it and connexes and things like that are out on ranches that somebody's leasing for hunting, because that's a big thing in Texas. So we're watching those things. We did have an exercise here in 2023 where we did exactly that. My team played OC, observer controller, for that, and it was all throughout from El Paso to the Woodlands, which is over by Houston,
Wow.
and then San Antonio and Lubbock. So those 4 regions were involved in this exercise, which were 1,000 participants, which did then do a fusion of all of our intelligence ability, and then to pay attention to what the TTPs are, techniques, tactics, and practices, as to how they're going to coordinate. So that was a pretty robust exercise. That's probably one of the best I've seen in the state of Texas. So
yeah, that's absolutely amazing, Doc. So Khalid, next question up for you, just because you're in that part of the world. How did these insurgent networks, survive pressure in Iraq and Afghanistan? And are there parallels that we can take from that we may see here?
Yeah, look, the easiest thing to look for is instigators. People that are looking for local issues that they can explode on, that they can take advantage of, whether it be a security issue, whether it be a supply issue, something they can turn into a common cause of some kind, and they get people to rally around it. Once you get people rallying around, they build a support base for themselves, and they can disappear inside that support base. Inside that, the reason the mosques are so important to watch is because that's their automatic support base. They go in, they sit down, nobody asks any questions. Why do they live in Muslim communities? Because no one asks any questions. They can meld in very easily. Why do they like college campuses? They can meld in very easily. Nobody asks any questions. Put a book bag over your shoulder and walk across campus. Nobody even asks if you're a student or not. You can be doing surveillance on an entire city and no one will even pay attention to you. Oh, I'm a student at this university. That's why I'm here. No one asks a second question. The thing you need to start looking for is people that have a adverse reaction to very simple things. For example, the best test I use is I start talking about Israel and Palestine, and I watch the reaction I get. When you have an extremist in front of you, he will overreact. Once he overreacts, he's exposed himself. Then you start watching him. That becomes a target for you. You need to find little things that you can use to cause a person to show themselves, because they've been taught to control. They've been taught to hide. They've been taught to lie. But there are certain behaviors they cannot control. One of those behaviors is a Muslim issue. Pick it up, beat it, take the opposite position on them. See how they react. If they get hostile, if they get over hyper, you need to start watching that guy, because he is there for something other than what he says he's there for.
Yeah. So if they have a visceral reaction, then that's the sign. So Jeff, I got 2 questions for you here. The first one, and they're related to each other. How can everyday Americans be trained to spot these anomalies, these logistical anomalies or communication footprints without becoming amateur spies? Is there any giveaways for this stuff?
Well, yeah, you look at people, it's fun. I used to do it in airports when I was on layovers. Just get a seat and just watch people. And do they move with purpose?
Yep.
Or are they aimless? Do they go and then come back and then go and then come back? The question you would ask is why? If someone's in your neighborhood and they're just aimlessly wandering around, you should be asking yourself why. It reminds me of a story in Vietnam. There was a kid on a motor scooter who was he'd ride up the road, and there was a military base, and then he would ride past, and then he'd ride again and ride just up and back, wasn't carrying anybody, wasn't going anywhere. Well, what he was doing, he was measuring the distance on his little odometer. So when they called in, when they started doing mortar strikes, they had the range down.
Wow.
So, it's stuff like that, but that's kind of hard to do and be nonchalant. and look for people trying to be nonchalant. And it's actually fairly obvious when you see it, but yeah, you look for people who don't belong in your neighborhood. You look for people who don't have purpose. You look for people who are doing the same behavior over and over, but for no benefit to them or anybody else. So you're like, okay, what is that guy doing? I mean, this isn't the old lady power walking around the mall for exercise. You got to look for what doesn't pass the sniff test.
Yeah, that makes sense. Trust your gut. So the follow-up question to that is, what are the limits for everyday citizens of gathering intelligence before it becomes unsafe or counterproductive? I'm thinking George Zimmerman when I put that question down. That's the first thing.
Yeah, I was living in that county when that happened. Yeah, it's like if you find someone who doesn't belong in your neighborhood and you keep an eye on them, that doesn't mean you follow them all the way through the neighborhood and you get 10 feet behind them and you ask, hey, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? What are you doing here? Because you're basically going to have a confrontation. And if that person is meaning to do harm to people, he's not going to hesitate to do harm to you. So this is when you have to be subtle. And if you make them uncomfortable enough that they leave your neighborhood, you've kind of mission accomplished at that point. Your guy, you went out and started videotaping. He got all pissed off, but you know what? He left.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I don't imagine that the printing from the front of my pants gave it away or anything.
There you go.
So, Doc, I've got a question from our audience, from a fellow Texan, a good friend, Roger, and we'll go right into the next segment after this. So he's asking, does Doc know anything about all the Mexican license plates living in interior Texas, West Texas in this specific case?
West Texas specific. Well, we always see them down in, Del Rio, El Paso, and Laredo, McAllen. You're going to see, the people that come across sometimes for the day to work, sometimes go shopping, and they get a day pass. They'll come across the ports of entry. That's typical. The thing I tell people to pay attention to is the foreign CDL, commercial driver license trucks that are coming across, because that is the next phase, if you will, now that the tourniquet's been put on the border with regard to cartels pushing people across. Now you're seeing semis that come across with a Mexican and a U.S. tag on it. And these are foreign CDL drivers. And not only are they taking business away from our U.S. drivers, but there's a large thing that we're looking at. I'm just going to say a tactic that we're looking at, because they're bringing in people or other items that are illegal that are in those things and in those trailers. And honestly, there have been a lot of people working ports of entry that have been paid off to look the other way. Mm-hmm. I know it. There has been some extreme hardware that's coming across in the form of surface-to-air missiles we've talked about in the past in New Mexico. Now, I can't say that was in Texas, but these are things that are concerning, because they've changed, because they can't do what they were doing before, right? They can't just come across the border, play the whack-a-mole game where they surge 900 people across a point. Everybody goes to that point, and then they go end around on us with products and guns and people. So and fentanyl, you name it. So those tags, those vehicle tags, that's something to pay attention to. Hey, look, if you see something like that, it looks nefarious, report it, because they'll pull them over. DOT, they're getting onto it now, and we've got to, you saw the big semi that took a left turn on a highway and somebody got killed. That was a foreign CDL driver that did that. They can't even read English, much less speak it, and be expected to pass a driver's license. But they're buying the CDLs in the United States at certain locations near you. So that is a concern. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that U-turn was on the Florida Turnpike just south of here that killed the 3 people. Go. And that guy, when he did his test for CDL in California, they had 12 random street signs, and he was only able to identify one of them. And that doesn't include the balance of the test, but 1 out of 12 for street signs.
There you go.
So, Doc, before we move into segment 3, just because you mentioned the border. Are you aware that a bunch of CBP officers were given offers to come to ICE, including our good friend JJ Carroll, who you've worked with, and they were all ready to start imminently? Like JJ was supposed to start on Monday, and ICE reached out to him and said that he was not qualified to be an ICE officer, and therefore they were rescinding the offer. And of course, he was a special agent. He was several levels above what he would have been doing in Kansas City. I don't know if you heard this or not. We just broke the news.
No, I hadn't.
Yeah. So
I hadn't got that one.
So you work the border in multiple different capacities. I mean, I know what the answer is, but go ahead and tell me what you think of them saying to JJ Carroll that he wasn't qualified. That's just insanity.
Right. I mean, on its face value, it seems insane. And it really, when you look at the woke DEI programs that have had infiltrated even the DOD all the way down to every agency, somewhere in there, somebody is looking at that on a stack of, applicants and saying, no, I don't really like this guy. He's not a unknown entity. So I don't know. I mean, I'm only speculating on that.
Sure.
Because I know the man, he's physically fit, spent some time with him. He's got the right attitude. He should be out there doing the job, but yeah, I can't say why on that one, but it doesn't seem right. But it doesn't pass the sniff test.
No, it doesn't. I mean, my initial thought was one of these, anti-American, anti-Trump, anti-mega civil servants has cock-blocked JJ and the rest of them because they're the perfect candidate for the job, for crying out loud. But anyway,
yeah,
I digress. So let's move into segment number 3. And there's only 5 segments for tonight's episode. So this segment is on counterinsurgency principles, especially Iraq and Afghanistan, and their civilian adaptation. So in Iraq, a turning point was the Sunni awakening in Anbar province, and locals turned against the insurgents, which enabled our troops to stabilize the area. And the U.S. surge strategy paired population security, local partnerships, and targeted operations to shift momentum. In Afghanistan, a little bit different. The complexity, of local, tribal, ethnic, religious, geographic dynamics often outran what the external counterinsurgency plans were, and successful coin strategies required integrated civil military operations, legitimacy, intelligence fusion, clear rules of engagement, which that's a topic we've spoke a lot of that for me as an outsider just makes me shake my head, and enduring presence, not these like quick raids. So for citizens, these translate into building trust networks, sustained monitoring, local legitimacy, like voluntary cooperation, information sharing, and layered defense, not one-off, things. So, Doc, what are the counterinsurgency principles used by you guys, the U.S. forces in Iraq, not Afghanistan, but Iraq, would be the most feasible for citizen adoption here in America?
Yeah, for me in the area of operations I was in, mostly urban, and so there's obviously some nuances to that are different than the out in the hinterlands of the desert, not so much the mountains of Afghanistan. I'm going to always defer to, information is key because it drives operations, right? And in order to do that, much what Jeff MD was talking about earlier, we have to look at what are the principles of being able to identify, the cornerstones, if you will, of situational awareness. And the training that I received under SOFSAT, which is situational awareness training for soft guys, Left to Bang is a great book out there. Van Horn wrote it. That's where the book, the principles were given there. You got to be able to teach people how to identify, because if everybody's an observer, everybody's a reporter on this stuff, that's what force multiplies you. The reason you can do so much with so little downrange, Afghanistan, Iraq, it doesn't really matter where, is the force multiplication of it. So if I can get each and every one of these little groups, much like we did in Iraq, teaching them, here's what you look for. This looks normal, right? This looks abnormal. Here's a Mahdi army flag. It's a bunch of guys with masks on. This guy's got a bomb in his hand and a shovel. I mean, I'm being very, being very tongue in cheek with that. But you've got to get you got to see what normal looks like. Just even like sitting in an airport. Exactly right. I do that all the time. I did it in my training. I still do it. I can't help it. And I'm watching for the anomalies because they will stand out like a sore thumb. For me as a doctor to listen to a heart and know what a bad one sounded like, I had to listen 10,000 hearts. And then I'm like, there it is. So you gotta know the kinesics, the kinesiology, the movement, the body language, the biometrics, the guy sweating, the proxemics, who's the grand poobah when they're having a discussion out there in the distance, how close who's ingratiating themselves to this other person, paying attention to who the boss is over there. Obviously you're not going to walk down a dark alley in the Bronx, New York, if you're not, unless you live there. And then geographics, where are you now? All these indicators. And then if you got 2 or 3, right, that's when you start reporting. I report it too, like, hey, heads up, this is coming. At 3, then I go fire for effect. And then when I say that, some sort of action needs to take place, because you can't sit and wait and decide after it happens. Otherwise, you're right of bang. So those same tactics apply across the board. But we did that more so in Iraq, just with the city and urban environments.
Yeah, very, very, very interesting. So, Khalid, next one for you, and it's 100% in your wheelhouse. What are the best practices for fusing intelligence from multiple civilian sources without actually creating the chaos by misinterpretation?
Well, to be able to adequately judge intelligence, you have to have your own intelligence network before the civilians. Because if a civilian starts calling you up and saying there's a problem here, there's a problem here, if you don't have eyes there, you don't know if that really is a problem or not. And you're going to be doing a lot of running around for no reason at all. One of the mistakes that was made in Afghanistan was, while U.S. forces were here, you didn't get population support in the Pashtun areas. You got it in the Tajik areas, you got in the Hazara areas. There was the quote unquote minorities in Afghanistan. But you didn't get in the Pashtun areas, and the Pashtun areas were all controlled by the Taliban. So what they did is, on top of your government, they set a second-tier government. So whatever you were doing, the guy was asking the Taliban, that should I do this or not? Even if your governor would sign saying yes, they would go to the Taliban's shadow governor and ask him for permission as well. So what you see is a multi-layered system, because they've seen a weakness in the way you set up. The key to being able to recognize this, the whole point of that statement, the key to being able to recognize this is you need population support. That means everyone has to buy into the theory that this is a threat. If you don't have that, you've already handcuffed yourself. You've already blinded yourself, because you're trying to cover an entire area with your 2 set of eyes and your ears, and you can't do that. When you have population support, they lock in with you. They come into lockstep with you, that they're watching for the things that you've told them to watch for. People dressing oddly, people behaving oddly, people moving around at very odd hours, people that are automatically grouping together, speaking a foreign language, and when an American walks by that doesn't understand that language, immediately stops talking. Well, if I don't understand your language, why do you stop talking? That's a trigger, because your fear is there might be somebody there that understands it, and they may hear something. So, I mean, these, like with Lisa, I have taught her these things, that when you're walking around and you hear people talking, for example, Farsi, you're safe. You hear somebody speaking Pashto, pay attention. Because if there's a group of people around them, most likely those are terrorists.
Wow. While you were saying that, I was thinking to myself, one of the points that's been in every sheriff's office bulletin that I've seen as far as warning over empty homes here in Florida was look for people coming and going at odd hours.
Yep.
So just interesting that you would raise that as well.
I'll give you another one. We caught one cell operating in the U.S. that was meeting inside the forest. They would leave the city, they would leave the neighborhood and go out to the forest, and they would all meet there thinking they were secure. People started watching that forest because they saw people going in at night and going, why are they going in the forest at night? They caught a cell that way.
Very interesting. Jeff, question for you. And we're on the citizen side of this again. How do citizens, or just everyday Americans, maintain some form of like continuity and persistence rather than sporadic vigilance? Because this is kind of one of those things where people get all gung-ho and nothing really happens, and they get bored and they go back to watch the football game. You're on mute, Jeff.
That's definitely a threat or a problem. One way to do it, I think, is keep records. I mean, if you see a strange car coming in your neighborhood, write down the make and model, get a license plate number if you can, and then, have it there. And then if you see something later or somebody else sees something, you can go back and check your notes and go, wait a minute, I saw that same car a week and a half ago and it was doing squirrely stuff. And then what that does is it gives you, it affirms what you've seen, and it gives that other person who's watching, it bolsters them, because it's like, okay, yeah, I'm doing this, and no, I'm not paranoid because somebody else saw the same car 2 weeks ago doing the same squirrely stuff. And so it kind of reinforces the behavior. It's like if you're doing something and you get no positive feedback, you're going to quit doing it. It's like, who goes on a diet for 6 months and doesn't lose an ounce and stays on the diet? Nobody.
Yeah.
You need that positive interaction. And so what you do is those two people are giving each other positive feedback, and they're giving, and reinforcing the proper behavior. And then sometimes, just schedule things. Say, hey, let's all sit down on Saturday over beers and say, hey, what have you seen in the neighborhood this week? And compare notes, and you get that reinforcement going on. I think that's real important, because you can't do it by yourself. You got to get other people looking too.
No, that's great advice, Jeff. Well done. Well done. So we've got 2 segments left to go. I just want to quickly mention, if you go to survivaldispatch.news, that's our Substack, and you can see the live video at the top. So when we're broadcasting live, it's always at the top of our Substack. When we're not broadcasting, the top is the daily sit rep situation report. If you could do me a favor and go over and sign up for free, there's a top 100 list on Substack, and we've been very consistent in the top 5, 10, top 15, but we haven't had a bunch of signups the past few days. You don't have to pay, just the free sign up. If you could head on over there, we'd like to get back up to the top, because it's a self-licking ice cream cone. When you're at the top, more people see you, more people sign up and follow you. And we've put a lot of time and effort into our Substack, because it's really the only platform out there that doesn't engage in any suppression or censorship. Anything goes unless it's illegal or pornographic in nature. But when you sign up for a free membership, you get early access to all of our instructional videos. Got a kick-ass one from JJ Morris, going to air tomorrow morning at 08:38 Eastern time, and there's a reason why it's 38 minutes after the hour. And if you're in our Guardian chat, ask me and I'll tell you why. You get our weekly watch guides, and you also get our daily sit reps like I just showed you. Now, the people who sign up as paying members, $7.99 a month or $74.99 a year, gets you 2.5 months for free. They also get our entire library of Survival Dispatch Insider e-magazines. There's 37 of them, $10 a piece. So you're getting $370 worth of media for free. You get enrolled in the Survival Dispatch emergency notification system. You get access to 3 of our signal chats, 2 of which are from a participation standpoint, just off the chain. The other one's just for the emergency notifications. But the volume of information that is exchanged between experts and just everyday people like you and me in those signal chats is absolutely insane. You get all the sources for our sit reps, and you also get behind the scenes content. So with that out of the way, let's move into segment number 4 here. And in this part, we're going to be discussing citizen level tools, whether it be intelligence communication, protocols, like Doc said, SOPs, standard operating procedures. So Doc mentioned it first, right? Intelligence is the lifeblood of counterinsurgency. So knowing who's in your community, what patterns are normal, what's anomalous, that's key. So in Afghanistan, intelligence, call it reform, meaning like fixing intel proposals, emphasized a relevant layered collection tied to tactical operations. So citizens can play a role in structured observation, like Jeff just did an excellent job of explaining, pattern logs, which Jeff also spoke to, open source monitoring, so OSINT, open source intelligence, this layered collection tied to tactical operations. Citizens can, or pardon me, communication protocols, must ensure like some element of coordination without compromise. So what does that mean? Coming from a tech guy like me, that means using encrypted apps. It's mean not somebody else can't, monitor what's in your communications. You've got some level of trust that you can verify. Something like Signal. There's a reason we use Signal. Signal is open source software. Open source software means that anybody can go look at the source code. When you use closed source proprietary software, it's like buying a car with the hood welded shut. So guys like me will go to the GitHub for Signal, which is 100% open source. If there were backdoors in Signal, many people like myself would have spotted it many, years ago. And that's the beauty of open source software, is that nobody can sneak one by you. And before somebody throws in the comments, well, I heard there was a vulnerability in Signal. Every single vulnerability that I've seen that has had the name Signal attached to it was actually a phishing attempt. So it was a PEBCAC problem, PEBCAC problem that exists between keyboard and chair. So what it was is somebody tricking somebody else into giving up their credentials. It's called social engineering. It had nothing to do with the Signal app and everything to do with the person, in a phishing attack. And the last thing, some element of response protocols should have clearly defined escalation tiers, safe assembly points, like rendezvous points. Somebody's got to, in your group, be a liaison with law enforcement. Doc has done some very high level liaison work, by the way, over the years between formerly DOD and other agencies, as well as the fact of, where can you fall back to? Where can you be concealed? So, Doc, coming to you right off the bat here to tap into your experience and knowledge here. What kind of intelligence gathering is realistic and legal for ordinary citizens?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. With regard to the way it works for me in the counter human trafficking world, 99% of what I can obtain, we can get through open source, and then we don't have any red side access. So we're kind of happy about that because it's one less concern that I got to deal with. But for us, it is actually teaching the citizens, and you find them everywhere. There are people that really care about this subject throughout the country, and we put them through training with Association of Recovery of Children through Basel Baz's organization, and they go to this training, and so then they're able to then learn how to do this, because something Khalid brought up earlier is you can't have everybody crying the sky is falling. Hey, I just saw a car that had a whatever colored tag thing around it, whatever around the tag. I think that's what pedophiles use. I'm like, well, some of this stuff is just not really sound advice. So we'll be chasing our tails. So you get folks to understand the key indicators. Once again, left to Bang Theory, but through these courses, you train them. So that right there, open source. There's a way to use that medium to really narrow things down and look for the key indicators with regard to counter human trafficking. When it comes to neighborhoods and things like that, one of the key things to do also is to coordinate with your local law enforcement. We do that with our communities, and you bring in the local, in Texas, constable. Typically, they're easier to work with, and sheriff's departments as well. Just sometimes sheriffs in Texas, you got a good one, you got a bad one. I mean, it's just the way it is. They're not all the same color. And so when I'm talking about coordinating, if you got to shut a neighborhood down and say, hey, look, this could happen, because some of the communities that are fringe to Austin area on the outskirts, they do have an Antifa presence every once in a while. If a neighborhood coordinates with his constable, then he already knows, hey, we're going to shut our street down, and we're not going to let it come in, and we're going to call you, and you're going to come and take care of the situation if we can't develop some sort of positive credentials on this person. And those conversations have taken place. So then you work with a former law enforcement guy in your group who knows that constable, and then now you've developed what a smaller idea is of a fusion cell of information. The cop's going to give you what he can, and he's going to share and say, hey, guess what? You guys got a TDA group that's running around here, and we do have them in Texas, as well as MS-13, and other groups that we're dealing with. Some of them just opportunist, los cholos, we call them down in Austin, where they're just rolling cars and stealing stuff. So, that's just a gang of kids. But you got to know the area, you got to know, the indicators, and you got to build those little fusion cells, even though they aren't official. You can do it, but it's going to require relationships, trust.
Man, that's great advice, Doc. I really appreciate that. So, Khalid, next up for you is, in your opinion, how would you design a neighborhood network to securely vet and eventually trust new people in the neighborhood, new participants even that maybe live in the neighborhood but haven't participated before?
Well, back in the old days, we used to have barbecues where the neighbors got together and you knew who your neighbors were, you knew who their kids were. You have to get to know your neighbors first before you can start talking about securing your neighborhood. If you don't know who your next door neighbor is, or who's living across the street from you, or what houses are empty in your neighborhood, how do you secure your neighborhood? How do you know if someone comes in that doesn't belong there? So the first thing is getting to know the neighbors. Have a weekly get together, cookout, poker game. Just get together and find out what's going on. From that, slowly develop and start talking. Have you seen anything odd in the area? Have you seen any vehicles here that don't belong? Have you seen this? And it's just in general conversation. You're not raising anyone's alert level. You're just asking questions. Then what you do is you start setting up a layered approach. Farthest out is the first one that sees things. So he needs to be connected with the second tier. Second tier is connected with your command center should be in the middle. That should be your most secure, experienced person that's in the middle running the entire thing. He can run intelligence for you. He can make sure that he vets people. That person is someone that that you can say, okay, listen, there's this guy named Khalid who's moving into our neighborhood. He's from Pakistan. How do we find out if he's, a terrorist or not? And he knows what kind of questions to ask to figure out if this person is a threat or not. He'll also be able to train the people on the outer side circle of the neighborhood. When someone's trying to enter, they can stop the car and say, hey, can I help you find something because you don't look like you're from here? And that's a great approach. You don't look like you're from here. Can I help you find what you're looking for? And that gets you an introduction. It's like we said with the churches, that door greeter that just walks up and says, hey, how you doing? You've never been to this church. We haven't seen you in this church before. What brings you in today? It's just that first touch.
That's really interesting, Khalid, because that's one of the things that our good friend Keith Graves teaches to church and church security. If somebody shows up that you've never seen before, make contact with them. Hey, how you doing? I'm Keith. Nice to meet you. And strike up a conversation, and then obviously fall back to your gut instinct based on how they react.
It's a threat. It's a threat test. I mean, when you see somebody that shouldn't be there, rather than see something, say something to somebody else. You see something, you say something to them. Hey, how you doing? But you look like you're lost. Can I help you find something?
It's interesting stuff, actually, Jeff. I've got a question for you, but let's just ruminate on this for a second. The Israelis and their airports reportedly, as soon as you come on premises, regardless of what vehicle you're coming on the airport property with, they ask everybody two questions: what's your name and where you're going? And the studying I've done on it says that trips people up who typically have bad intentions. Why is that? What's the psychology behind that, Jeff?
They're not prepared for interaction because they're not there to interact. They're there to case. They're there to conduct an attack. They're not there to engage in conversation, and it doesn't fit with their plan. What Khalid was discussing earlier, just a second ago, I do that in my neighborhood. First, I know everybody in my neighborhood. I can point to the house and tell you who lives there, what their story is, where they're from, everything. Because anytime somebody moves into our neighborhood, anybody new, we always make a point. You introduce yourself to them. You say, welcome to the neighborhood. You get, hey, where are you from? Where do you work? What do you, typical American kind of questions. And then we invite them to a happy hour. Oh, we're going to have a happy hour. We'd like, you get to meet all the neighbors. And how they respond to that is usually pretty telling, because if they're new to a neighborhood and they want to belong, they're like, great, I would love to do that. The other one, if I see a car driving up and back, it's slowly, questionable, I'll actually go out there and stop them and say, hey, you look kind of lost. Can I help you find where you're going? And I got to the point where I had FedEx would stop at the bottom of the hill by my house and kind of wait. And then I would go out and say, okay, who are you looking for? Because they wouldn't have the name or the address would be wrong. I just said, give me the first name. Okay, yeah, Dan, he's the fourth house on the right up the hill, you know. And I joked that I was the Google Maps of our neighborhood, because Google Maps would screw up and send you to the wrong address. But how they respond to that is really telling. If it's a truck driver and he's like, oh, thank God, I've got to make this delivery and go on my way, he welcomes it. If they're a little squirrely, maybe they're casing something, they're not going to welcome it. And, and you just come across as being helpful.
Yep.
And if they are up to something nefarious, it also tells them, maybe you want to go to a different neighborhood because people here pay attention.
Yep.
Yeah. So as you were saying that, I mean, the combination of the fact that you're retired and you're making contact with people coming into your neighborhood, you're the Walmart greeter of your neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's what crossed my mind.
They call me the gatekeeper of Gozer from what was it, Ghostbusters,
Right?
Because nobody can come into this neighborhood without going past my house.
That's too funny.
Because the road makes a T right at my property. You either go right or left, but you can't come in without passing my house. And then we've got a boatload of cameras, and we'll actually have people say, somebody squirrely came in front of my house last night. Can you check your cameras and see where they came from? And so we'll back up and say, yeah, they came from this way. It was this kind of car, And then they went out. They said they were looking for someone, and we'll say, well, yeah, they left your house and they went up the hill going up to so-and-so's house. Okay, that makes me feel better. So he wasn't, blowing smoke.
Right on. So
I've got like a dozen cameras around my house.
Nice. So I had one more question that I'll address myself, just because it's in my wheelhouse as far as secure communications are concerned. So y'all heard me ask Doc Pete if they had business class radio. So if you have a group, like a neighborhood watch group, it makes a lot of sense to pay around, $500 ish to have somebody in the radio business submit your FCC request for business class license. What that does is it gives you 5 dedicated frequencies that are at really odd points in the frequency bands that other people can't access without having some pretty advanced knowledge. But they also have encryption, which ham radios are not allowed to have encryption, but business class are. But they also do channel hopping. So the radios that Doc Pete used when he was overseas, the Harris radios, they can hop up to 100 channels every 1 second. There's a limitation. I think it's like 5 or 6 is what you're allowed to do here domestically. We have Motorola business class radios. They channel hop 3 times every second. So they go from 1 to 3 of our 5 channels every second. And they cost a little bit more because it's better quality gear. It's typically Motorola, Kenwood would be the top names. But at the end of the day, if you have a group of people and you're, let's say, within a mile and a half in a residential neighborhood, the handheld radios, they typically are 4 or 5 watts, will more than suffice. The mobile radios, you can get upwards of 10 miles away if you've got the right elevation, but they're UHF and VHF, so they're subject to being blocked by trees and buildings, all that kind of stuff. But either way, that they're a great option when you have a group, so you can pool your money together to have encrypted comms. Because if you go to Walmart and you buy those FRS bubble radios, they use 16 of the 22 channels that are in GMRS. If you go buy GMRS radios, all 22 channels, of course, are available to you. You pay $35 for a 10-year family license, includes you all the way out to your first cousins, by the way. But anybody can listen in on that. We have GMRS radios for that sole purpose. I actually just bought a module that goes on top of one of my shortwave rigs that allows me to listen in on GMRS stuff. I can't transmit on it, but I can listen to it while I'm on my main radio, which is strictly for reconnaissance purposes. Application wise, there's only 2 apps that I trust for being secure. Number 1 is Signal. Number 2 is Wire. And again, when it comes to security, nothing trumps open source software, because not only can we see under the hood, things get fixed in the blink of an eye. Proprietary software, you could have a vulnerability that exists for years before they get off their ass and they patch it. That doesn't happen in the open source world, the open source community. So with that being said, that is the end of segment 4. We're moving into the final chapter, segment number 5. Sorry, you got something to add, Jeff?
Yeah. one safety tip: if you can use GMRS if you've got a neighborhood watch thing, because there are 20 some odd channels, and someone would have to sit there and go through all the channels to find you talking. Agree on a channel.
Yeah.
If you're on 9 and they're on 12, it doesn't matter that you have a radio at all.
Yeah, I would add to that. I mean, any half decent radio has scan on it, so it'll scan and it'll stop when it hits some communication. But what we've done in the past, before we had our business class licenses, Jeff, is we had a simple formula that dictated what the channel was. So, for example, if it's 1400 local time, then it's channel 1400 sort of thing, right? You got 22 channels, you got 24 hours in a day. Sometimes it was simple, sometimes a bit more complex, but good point that you're not going to connect with each other if you're not on the same channel, for sure. I think one of the problems, to be honest with you, with the FRS and GMRS radios and even ham radios for people who are not up to speed, is they buy them, they look at the box, it says 25, 35 mile range. They turn it on. They're like, oh yeah, that's cool. They put it back in the box. They let it sit there until the shit hits the fan. They don't know how to operate it. And two, they discover, wait a minute, this thing doesn't do 35 miles or 25 miles unless you're in the salt flats or you have access to repeaters. And outside of California, we just do not have widespread public repeater networks in the rest of the country. So, that's a caveat right there. So segment number 5 is implementation risks and sustaining counterinsurgency networks. Coin networks, I kind of think neighborhood watch is a better term, but that's just me. So implementation of this stuff, it takes time. It requires patience. You've got training components. Natural leaders will hopefully rise, to the top, like Doc Pete. You've got to allocate resources. You've got to have legal awareness, just like we started this conversation with Jeff saying, I'm not an attorney. And I say that all the time. I'm not an attorney. I just play one on a podcast. So risks, if you're thinking in terms of risks from all this stuff, false accusations are one that jumps out. And Doc Pete and I have a mutual friend who was falsely accused of doing stuff and has been 100% exonerated in a court of law, but it turned his world upside down. So you want to play some forethought to whatever you're doing, like you're building your group, that you definitely have the right people involved. It's very easy for somebody to infiltrate your group unless you're, have some element of awareness, like Khalid and Jeff and Doc are experts at this stuff. Another thing to be aware of is, I don't know what the right term is for civilians, but I would call it like mission creep, where the mission just keeps getting bigger and more complex. How to deal with civil conflict, how to deal with lawbreakers that come into your neighborhood, exploit your network. So essentially, like these mag groups, there has to be this element of continuity, right? So what happens if somebody's not home? What happens if somebody's in the hospital? What happens if somebody's injured? Who fills that person's role that they've been assigned? So we're back to the old adage, 3 is 2, 2 is 1, 1 is none. Or if you're Chris Heaven, I think we're up to now, I think 24 is 23, 23 is 22 all the way down, because it's my thing. But the other part, I suppose, and I'll have Doc speak to this, is the dangers of feedback loops, where, the old thing they taught us when we were in kindergarten, where you say purple to the person beside you and it goes through 20 kids, and by the time it gets to the end, it's blue, or something to that effect. As well as keeping all of this stuff aligned again within the limits of the law. I would say that mags, I don't like the term coin networks. I don't know why they call them that, but that's just me. I think mutual assistance group sounds better, but you've got to avoid, I'm trying to think of the right term, maybe being over aggressive, over weaponizing, because that's how things cross that line into being a vigilante. Let me give you a quick example of that before I go to Doc with a question. So in 2010-ish timeframe, there was a guy pulled into a gas station in Jacksonville. He's pumping gas. This SUV of young black kids pulls in, and they're blasting rap music, and this white guy pumping gas doesn't like it. And he says, turn that effing shit off. And they said something back, in the same kind of, attitude to him. He claimed that one of the kids in the back, there was 4 of them in this SUV. He claimed one of them in the back had a gun, and he was in fear for his life. So I want to say he had a Glock 23, a 40 cal Smith & Wesson, I think it's like 13+1 or 14+1 with the stock magazines. He dumped all 14 rounds into the side of that SUV before they mashed the throttle and pulled away. When they pulled away, he dropped the empty mag, put a full one in, and dropped 14 into the back of the SUV. In Florida, if you're convicted of a gun crime, each count carries a minimum 20-year sentence. So when he dumped the first mag, even though this kid in the back did not have a gun, under our stand your ground laws, believe it or not, you can get away with that by just claiming I thought my life was, in danger. But the 14 he put into the back of that SUV got him an 80-year sentence. Nobody was killed. None of the kids were even hit. But that's an example of crossing the line right there. And I guess I'll end my part of this before I hand it to Doc Pete, is that, having some cohesion amongst your group, having the protocols all defined, or procedures, SOPs, making sure that everybody in your group understands and respects the law, because this stuff has the ability to get you in deep shit very, very quickly. And also having an element of humility, not being, full of hubris, and knowing when it's time to just defer to law enforcement. So, Doc, apologies for the long-windedness there, but important question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What obstacles do you foresee in organizing MAG groups here in American cities, or even in a rural setting?
Well, great question. And in Texas, I'm going to answer it with a couple of stories here. One, I've got about, like, in Texas alone, probably 9 different cultures that exist, right? Just depends on where you're at. And it's just like probably 18 different European countries in size. So when we're talking about, machismo versus, down Southwest, you got the cowboys that live on the border that run ranches. And I don't know what it is. Well, I do know what it is about Texas. Everybody wants to get in a gunfight when a cartel is concerned, right? I'm gonna kill me some cartel boys. I'm like, you can do that. And now part of my job was to go down there and do threat vulnerability assessments and explain to them how to deny space, right? Because you got to be thinking like a ninja. So to avoid, dissuade, injure, maim, kill. That should be your spectrum. You shouldn't start off with dump 14 rounds in the back of a truck because somebody didn't like their choice of music. I mean, that's a bit out of control. So the emotional control over these people is something that when you're working with a group, you've got to identify. So me going into a group, when I walk into a room, I'm identifying, that there'll be people that will ask questions a certain way that, exactly as the former thing I was saying. Well, I can't wait to get in fight with some cartel guy. And I'm like, okay, so that guy right there, I know that I'm going to have to work on his emotional response, because that's the guy that's going to get everybody in trouble, right? This whole group. Up in Utah, when I was working with Mike Glover for a while there in Heber City at Fieldcraft, an article came out and said he's got a bunch of, it was The Hill. It was called The Hill Journal. And there was an article that was done on him that said, Mike Glover and these vigilantes that he's training up there. Well, I was one of them because I was up there with him. And, FBI out of Utah, out of Salt Lake City showed up. Well, they fell into the same trap. They read an article, an op-ed, and they decided that he was guilty before he was innocent, in the sense of, we're going to go make contact. So they drive up to the office and they come in, and we want to talk about this vigilante stuff. And, no homework was done. It was just, FBI guys walking in. And you got, Mike Glover is Asian American guy. I'm kind of brown. So we're not white supremacists. Now, Kevin Owens, I can't speak for him. He's a short Irishman. He's white as rice. So he'd probably be the only one that could be confused to be a white supremacist, but he wasn't. But here you get 3 Green Berets together, form a company. I didn't form it with them, worked with them for a while. And, therefore, you got to be white supremacist vigilantes. Well, it was squashed. It went away. But there it is. It's the perception, and perception in this business is reality.
Yeah.
So you got to squash those perceptions, and you got to really teach people how to take their own pulse first before they start doing whatever it is that they're going to do, right? And then I've seen it in exigent circumstances around the world, be it in the emergency room all the way to combat, is slow down, breathe, take your pulse, and then think about what you're doing. Listen, think, pause, then respond. Because if you don't LTPR that thing, you're going to end up in a situation either litigious or a gunfight that you didn't need to have.
There's an old adage, Doc, that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. We should listen twice as much as we speak. So,
listen, everybody wants to be a gangster until it's time to do gangster shit. I mean, that's just a rule.
True story.
Yep.
True story. So it's your turn to play attorney, Khalid. And what are the red lines that people should never cross, as private citizens, in your opinion? And you grew up here in America, so it's not like you're giving us advice from Pakistan.
No, look, you don't pull a weapon. I mean, that's the extreme. You do not pull a weapon unless you can actually say to a police officer, to a court, that yes, my life was in danger. And proving that to a police officer, to a court, that means the other guy had to have a weapon. If you were going to get a fist fight and you pulled a gun on him, that's game over. You're going to prison. A lot of people, the problem I always have is when you get these young guys, they're so full of testosterone that they think they can take on the world and win. And when it comes down to having to get into that situation, they're the first ones to run away because the bravado disappears. The guys we have on our teams, I always teach them one thing. Before you do anything, stop, take a breath, pretend you're a sniper. Hold your breath and decide if you're going to throw that punch or not. Decide if you're going to take that shot or not. Decide if you're going to say that phrase or not. That holding of your breath and making you think will calm you down. But if you do it in the heat of the moment, game over. Then you're up shit creek.
So a few things came to mind while you were speaking, Khalid. One, call it the behavior that you described. I call that the ball's bigger than the brain syndrome. Yep. Number one. Yep. Number two, there are most states now have some element of disparity of force. So for example, you're 75-year-old woman or something like that, and some guy who's 30 years old, 275 pounds is threatening to you, whether he's got a gun or not. You've got the big disparity of force. And then if you have good stand your ground laws like Texas and Florida, she would be within the realm of the law, but you got to know your law. Every state's different. Every county, like Doc said, it's got a different sheriff, some of whom will run you down and others who won't. Go ahead, Cleve.
If you remember, Chris, I told you a while back that I carry 3 weapons with me. I have short staffs, I have a knife, and I have a gun. Depending on situation, I pull the right weapon. If a guy is threatening me, a short staff stick will back him off. You don't need to go to an extreme. If you're a 75-year-old woman and a 30-year-old guy breaks into your house, that's a threat. If you fire, you're protecting yourself. But if you got 2 30-year-old men that get a little bit out of control in the conversation, when one of them pulls a stick, you're going to calm down.
Yeah, well said. And I just want to share a number, by the way, when you were talking about, people pulling guns and stuff. 70% of Floridians who are killed by gunshot wound that did not commit suicide are shot with their own gun each year here in Florida. They pull a gun, they go into condition black, bad guy takes their own gun away from them, shoots them with them, DRT. So just wanted to throw that in there. Jeff, I got a question's perfect for an engineer. So in private business, we all, live and fail by KPIs, key production, performance indicators, and what's measured gets done, right? So like if we measure what our progress is and we have a goal, we know when we're doing the right thing versus the wrong thing. Is there anything you can think of as far as the effectiveness of your mag, like something like a KPI that can be tracked, metrics, feedback? I don't know what, but it was just a question that crossed my mind this morning when I was putting the brief together.
Well, yeah, I think the key one is safety of the group or the neighborhood. How many break-ins did you have? Were there any assaults? Did you have issues with, people trespassing and threatening people and things like that? If you can keep that down without involving gunfire and dead bodies, then that's a success, because the object is to keep your group safe. And if you can do that without incurring the wrath of law enforcement, then you've been successful. I think another issue with the mag and things like that is keep the scope of your activities limited. have a defined boundary of where you're going to work, what you're going to do, what your objectives are. You can't be all things to all people. And if you take too big of a bite of the apple, you'll choke on it. So don't overreach, don't overextend. It's a neighborhood watch. It's not a citywide watch. You're not the police. You can't say, well, I'm going to take care of everybody for here and for 10 miles in any direction. No, you're not. That makes you the sheriff. That's not a mag. That's not a neighborhood watch. So don't bite off more than you can chew. And it's also going to depend on how many people are in your group. You can't guard a neighborhood that has 2,000 people in it if you got 3 guys.
Right. Yeah. Good point. Relativity counts. So that's the end of the 5th segment. Just a few notes to end on here is basically terrorists. I would refer to them as modern terrorists now because they've evolved so much. Khalid and his group, Sarah Adams, Jane Doe, have brought all kinds of intelligence to the table showing that the Islamic Army, which is the banner now that everybody falls underneath, whether it's Taliban, AQ, ISIS, ISKP, TTP, it goes on and on and on, that they're planning these complex coordinated terrorist attacks. If you haven't watched Hotel Mumbai, it's a really good watch, and you will probably absorb a lot from it as far as seeing a tangible example of just how bad this stuff plays out. But these are adversaries who've studied our military law enforcement operations for decades, and as Cleet's spoken to, they hold grudges for thousands of years, for crying out loud. The next one would be, if y'all are going to take action, put together a MAG, immediate action items, establish some sort of neighborhood communication network. The Ring doorbell thing is even not a bad place to start. My wife watches that like a hawk. We had a bike disappear, an e-bike disappear, and it wasn't stolen, but my wife was able to retrieve it because the cops were monitoring the Ring group, and they said, yeah, we found it. It was sitting on a sidewalk, blah, 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 sort of thing. So maybe start with something simple like that. And, as you're establishing your MAG, your mutual assistance group, kind of flesh out who has what strengths to make sure that they're in the right role so that they can succeed. And then the counterinsurgency lessons that, Doc Pete, Khalid, and Jeff learned as far as all these Middle Eastern conflicts are concerned, they're not military theory. These are things that were used and successfully used. So the rest of us, like myself, we can study those things and learn from it, or we can listen to people like Doc Pete, Khalid, and Jeff and learn in that way. So that's really all I've got to say on the ending of that. But we are at my very favorite part of the nightly podcast. Here we go. So Doc Pete, what you missed there was we've got this 4-second carnival, roar, splash comes out. I feel like I'm John Madden, Monday night, NFL football, 1987. That thing gets me fired up every time. I love that. So speaking of 1987, it's too bad that you couldn't see this, Doc, because this is a good one from Jack Posobiec this morning. He says the CEO of Pizza Hut has the opportunity to be a hero. He can do what must be done. He was replying to another tweet where the person said, greetings from the perfectly preserved late 20th century Pizza Hut with functioning salad bar. It's got the checkered tables, it's got the chairs, the green lamps, everything. It's like a time warp. Like if you went there, you might wake up and think, holy shit, I've gone back 3 or 4 decades in time.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
Absolutely awesome. And I'm trying to remember who submitted that. Shame on me. I can't remember who submitted it, but we had a new one for that. This is the story of the day from the audience. Is from Brianna. She's been super active in our private signal chats. And this one's from Andy No. A Portland area man has been federally charged for allegedly using a laser to try blind a pilot flying a Customs and Border Protection helicopter. The pilot had to abort the planned landing. When law enforcement arrived at Brian Keith Capillo Nepal's home, they found meth and evidence of drug trafficking. He's been charged for that too. He is now the 3rd person in the Portland area federally charged for using a laser to try and crash a federal aircraft. Does anybody want to speak to just how dangerous this is before we move into the conflicted question? Going once, going twice, 3 times. It's dangerous. Leave it at that. All right. So the next one up is the conflicted question of the night. So Pablo, the power thirsty son of a Mexican drug lord, saw an opportunity in the collapse of society. He wanted to rise up and control areas that were governed by chaos. If power was your goal and you had a few dozen men and arms at your disposal, how would you go about increasing your influence? And I got to tell you, like, this has got Doc Pete written all over it. So you get to go first, Doc.
Well, you gotta look at what works, and if you're a guy that's going into an area, let's just say you're a 12-man team going into Pashtunistan, and you're in a village stability operations scenario where, you got Haqqani network on one side, and you got the Jalalabad crew on the other side, and you got to live in the middle of it all. How do you influence your network? You've got to come in, if you're wanting to be the grand poobah or the Hefe, like they call it on the border, El Jefe, you gotta be ruthless, right? Yep. If that's what and what you say you're gonna do, you're gonna do, but you're gonna force multiply, or you're gonna have other people do your surrogate work for you. I mean, that's just how those guys operate, and in many ways, that's how we had to operate, in the sense of your man of your word. You're gonna do what you say, and you're here to help, but until you decide to cross us. So that's a force. That's a networking thing, and networking is not as easy as it sounds, because you're the outsider, or as if you're German or the Ostlander.
Yeah, true story. Well said, Doc. So Khalid, I'll go to you second on this. You can't kill them, by the way.
I'm not going to kill them. No, look,
battlefield execution, so you become the supreme commander. Okay.
No, I have tactics. We've used these tactics on the TTP. We've used these tactics on Haqqani. We break people off. We start slowly working on them, giving them money, giving them drugs, whatever their flavor is. And we start pulling them out of that network they're involved in. And we bring them to our side. So if you have 40 guys and I have 12, my goal is to break at least 10 guys off of your network. Once I break them off, I've developed my own base, and they're dependent upon me. Once they're dependent on me, I have soldiers.
Devious, downright devious, Khalid. Jeff, your thoughts?
I would find a vital resource that I could seize control over, be it a water supply. It could even be a bridge if that's the only way out of the town. And I control it. And then what you do is you give access to those who help you. You want water? Yeah, you help me out. I'll give you all the water you can drink. Screw with me? Maybe not so much. Yep. Or you want to cross the bridge and go to where the fields are and collect food. If you're on my side, that works. But if you're going to oppose me, that isn't going to work out for you. And that way you control a relatively Afghanistan. If you have the water supply, if you controlled access to the Balk River, you could control the whole frickin' province.
Yep.
Yeah. So is anybody else with me here on this one? That as Jeff's describing that, I'm thinking to myself, which Bond villain is Jeff? And do you actually? I mean, you're not the Asian
Christopher
guy.
Walken. He was trying to corner the market on computer chips.
There you go. That's what I was going with that as well. So yeah. Good call on that. And Chris F., thank you very much. That's very kind of you. $20 donation. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the tip. So wrapping this thing up, my answer to this, and I don't really care what anybody says about it. At 56 years old, I'm going to my cabin in the mountains where it's not too peoply out, and all these assholes can fight with each other, because I have less than zero desire to deal with it. So that's my answer, even though it's probably not the right answer, but it is for me and my wife. So
there you go.
Yeah, 100%. So I just wanted to give you all one more quick reminder. Go to survivaldispatch.news. That's our Substack. Please sign up for a free account. It helps us get up in that top 100 list. Further up, the higher we are, the more people that we get voting for us. And if you're one of the people who signs up to be a guardian, we really, really appreciate the support from you guys. And I'm not going to reiterate all the values that you get from them, but I will tell you that the amount of feedback that goes back and forth inside our signal chats is unfreaking believable. We never anticipated it was going to go this way. It wasn't the purpose. The purpose was to dispatch information to our fellow Americans and friends of America to survive in these very dangerous times. And it's turned into blossomed into a community. So I appreciate all the Guardians who, pay us $7.99 a month or $74.99 a year. Very much appreciate our premier sponsor, Carnivault, carnivault.com. Use the discount code EATMEAT. You'll get 10% off. Even Doc Pete's got some Carnivault. 100%. Everything's American. The bag's American. The O2 absorber's American. The ranchers are American. There's no mRNA. There's no antibiotics, no histamines. And check this out. Doc Pete, why did you leave the military after, golly, almost 40 years of service?
Standing up to the man, if you will, DOD, with regard to informed consents given, these shots to I had 6,000 troops on the border, mRNA vaccines. Said, no, not going to happen.
So yeah, thanks, Doc. And I mean, thank you for being a great American, by the way, but no mRNA guaranteed in Carnivault's product. We don't get affiliate commission from them. They're very generous. We get a stipend from them, helps us defer our expenses. And as a result of that, Clede and I get to work 17 hours a day. And maybe when we grow up, we'll be like Doc Pete and we'll work 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
So
There you go.
Last week, Chris.
There you go. So when y'all head over to survivaldispatch.news, do me a favor. On the right-hand side, you'll see recommendations. It circles through a bunch of them, but you'll eventually see the See Heaven show come up there. And that's Khalid Mine's Sunday night podcast. It's all zany news, crazy stuff. We talk a lot of, crazy stuff Monday to Friday. That's serious stuff. So Sunday nights, start your week off with a big grin and a smile with Khalid. Me, it's at 7 p.m. Eastern, just like our regular program during the week, but it's on the See Heaven show, cheaven.substack.com. My name is Chris Evan, letter C, heaven.substack.com. And it's a good time. And by the way, we cover some stuff that would get us nuked on, CommieTube, YouTube, and other platforms. It goes to X and it goes to Substack, and that's it. And that way we can cover all the stuff that they don't want us talking about. And then Monday night, we'll be back. Randy will be back from hunting. Jeff, Khalid, and I will be together at the usual time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Next episode in our Long War series, which is militias and community defense. So between now and then, do me a favor, please like, share, comment, subscribe. God bless America, and enjoy the closing video. This closing video is Doc P.
I shall never surrender or retreat. And I call on you, in the name of liberty and of patriotism, and everything dear to the American character, to come to our aid with all dispatch. P.S. The Lord is on our side.